Okay, we have some breaking news just to share with you, and the headline is that another member of the Conservative Party has crossed the floor to join the Liberal caucus. We have a statement from Member of Parliament Michael Chong, issued by the Liberal Party on his behalf. He is the Member of Parliament for Markham-Unionville, one of the key Greater Toronto Area seats that the Conservatives won in the last election. And the quote says, "After listening carefully to the people of Markham-Unionville in recent weeks and reflecting with my family on the direction of our country, I have informed the Speaker and the Leader of the Opposition that I will be joining Prime Minister Mark Carney in the government caucus. This is a time for unity and decisive action for Canada's future. I came to Canada at 12 years old as the youngest of 7, quickly learning the importance of hard work and resilience. Those values, building up others, delivering results, and choosing a path that creates opportunity, have guided me throughout my career in business and now as a Member of Parliament. In that spirit, I've concluded that Prime Minister Mark Carney is offering the steady, practical approach we need to deliver on the priorities I hear every day while door knocking in Markham-Unionville. This includes making life more affordable, growing a strong Canadian economy, strengthening community safety, and creating real opportunities for young people and families who are working hard to build their Canadian dream. I enter public service to help people, to focus on solutions, not division. I look forward to working with Prime Minister Carney to make sure that Markham-Unionville and all of Canada can move forward with confidence and build a stronger, safer, and more prosperous future." So this is from Michael Chong, Conservative Member of Parliament, now Liberal Member of Parliament for Markham-Unionville, announcing that he's informed the Speaker and the Leader of the Opposition, Poilievre, that he will be crossing the floor to join the Liberal caucus and join the governing caucus of Mark Carney. This, of course, will be the second Member of Parliament that has done this. Acadianapolis MP Chris D'Entremont, former Deputy Speaker of the House, a Conservative MP from Nova Scotia, crossed the floor on Budget Day, I believe it was. And, of course, Matt Genereux, the Conservative MP for Edmonton Riverbend, who had been rumored as a possible defector to the Liberals as well, announced that he would be resigning from his seat and retiring from politics at a future date, and has not been seen in the House of Commons or voting even remotely since that announcement was made. So there we are. Ironically enough, tonight is the night of the Liberal caucus Christmas party. The Christmas gift is that Michael Chong, the MP for Markham-Unionville, has defected from the from the Conservatives to the Liberals, bringing the Liberals up to 171 seats in the House of Commons, moving ever closer to a majority government. Okay, we'll have more on this. We've got a reporter roundtable coming. We're going to obviously seek reaction on this. In the meantime, oh, are they coming in now? Are we going to go straight to this, gang? What's happening here? Okay, you know what? This is a breaking news moment. Robert Fife, Joël Denis Bellavance, and Mia Rabson, they're here, they're walking in. Bob, walk in front of the cameraman. It's a breaking news environment. Just to catch everyone up on what's been going on. We were not expecting to do this, but welcome to news in 2025 in the capital city of Ottawa. It's Thursday night. You three are here, so they saved the big announcements for the best journalists roundtable in Canadian television. Michael Chong, the MP for Markham-Unionville. I'm going to Google some results here on the Markham-Unionville riding, as this is not expected today, because we had thought a lot of it had died down. A lot of it wasn't necessarily going to happen again, but here we are as Parliament breaks for Christmas. This is a seat, of course, that Paul Chang had held for the Liberals, Bob Soroya for the Conservatives, and John McCallum before that. The results, I'm trying to get the latest numbers from the last election. Just bear with me as I do this research in real time. Oh, hang on now. It changed. Anyway.
He won with 51%.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, 50.65% to 47.05%. So look, we've got our reporter roundtable here. Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Globe Mail, Bob Fife, Joël Denis Bellavance for La Presse, and Mia Rabson with the Canadian Press. Mia, because you jumped in with the math answer and staved me from treading water there on live television, I didn't see this one coming. What do we make of this and where this leaves Pierre Poilievre at this day?
I mean, my only response right now is wow. Like, I definitely didn't see this one coming today. You know, if the Liberals, we know there's still been conversations going on. We know that they're, you know, they want to get this to this majority number. But, you know, there was not a whiff of this. The day that Chris D'Entremont crossed a few weeks ago, you know, there was a lot of chatter that day. Everyone kind of knew what was about to happen. So this kind of came out of the blue for me, at least. Was not expecting this tonight. I believe that Mark Carney's on his way to the Liberal Christmas party with his new MP.
He sure is. JD, Brookfield did a lot of mergers and acquisitions. Mark Carney is he's brought that into Parliament. He said he'd run it like a corporation, but these aren't hostile takeovers. These are willing takeovers, it seems. Again, focus on solutions. Michael Maw says, not division, similar to what Chris Notremont said. What's your takeaway on this one?
So the first one was from Nova Scotia, Chris Notremont. This one is from Ontario, which is the core of the election. Win or lose, it's in Ontario that the battle is happening. So it's Christmas ahead of time for Mr. Carney. He's going to be walking around at that Christmas party where about 3,000 people are expected. They paid a lot of money for that party, so they'll be, I guess, applauding the latest recruit from Mr. Carney. And as you mentioned, it's a hostile takeover or willingness. It does change the landscape from now on for Mr. Poilievre and for the Liberal Party. Now they're getting closer to majority without, as you mentioned so often, without having an election. Maybe a majority.
It's remarkable.
It's remarkable.
I think it's probably worth noting that the Liberal Christmas party last year happened the day that Chrystia Freeland quit cabinet, and they had to go to that party, and it was a very different mood than it will be at that Liberal party tonight. Yeah,
that's when, Bob, we all thought Mark Carney might join the cabinet as the finance minister. I don't think he's ever going to be the finance minister at this rate.
Well, actually, he is.
Fair. Yeah.
Let's be honest.
But, when I was a young boy, I used to go to bingo with my grandmother, and when you were one away from a straight line or a four-corner, you were on the hitch. They got 171 MPs now. They're on the hitch for a majority, 172. They need one more.
Well, before the parliamentary break, after Chris Notremont had crossed the floor, we were all saying that we were hearing that there was a couple of MPs from Ontario that we expected to cross the floor. I had no idea it was going to be Michael Maw.
This was not a name anyone mentioned.
This was not a name that anybody had mentioned. On your show a few minutes ago, when you were talking to the House Leader, Stephen McKinnon, he said to you that there were a number of Conservative MPs who have been talking to them about that they support a lot of the legislation that's before Parliament, but they've had to keep quiet on it because the leader and the people around him have been obstructionist, and they when I listened to that, I thought, okay, he's hitting at something, but I had no idea that we're going to have obviously a floor crossing tonight. But this is a really serious problem that Pierre Poilievre does not want to recognize. He is behaving very childlike and not as serious in the House of Commons. If you're a member of Parliament, you come here to want to do things. When you have a leader of the opposition criticizing the Prime Minister for traveling, saying he's on a vacation, when he's actually meeting global investors to invest in Canada, when he tries to do a stunt like he did earlier this week to divide Canadians and the country over a pipeline in Alberta, which the Alberta government supports and presumably most Conservatives support, these are probably the kind of issues that drive somebody like a Michael Maw into the Liberal arms. And I suspect that they're talking to a couple more, given the pretty big hint that Mr. McKinnon gave you.
Yeah, he said they wander across the floor to say, we like what you're doing. And I said, kind of glibly, well, unless they walk all the way across the floor. And he had a certain eating grin on his face that I should have picked up on, but I didn't. But look, I want to show you who Michael Maw is. This is the newest member of the Liberal caucus. Michael Maw, he's a Canadian politician. His Wikipedia is going to need to be updated because he's no longer with the Conservative Party of Canada. He is brand new. He still has that new MP smell because he was elected on April 28th in Markham, Unionville. Born in Hong Kong, immigrated to Canada at the age of 12, as he said in his statement, raised in Vancouver, British Columbia, and did run before in Don Valley East in 2019. So, it's interesting, though, Bob, to pick up on your point that he talks about division, right? And we showed this Lorne Gunter column from the Edmonton Journal earlier in a conversation we had about polling data about Mr. Poilievre that we can bring back in a little bit. But he basically said that Lauren Gunter, a conservative columnist for the Edmonton Journal, wrote essentially what Corey Hogan had said, that Pierre Poilievre conservatives favor stunts over substance, and it's hurting them. When you're losing the Edmonton Journal, you've got some challenges.
Since September, that's exactly the kind of tactics and antics that we've been witnessing in the House of Commons. And, he's playing to inside the Ottawa bubble with this, how clever you are in sloganeering and partisan sniping in the House of Commons. And when you contrast that with a technocrat who's prime minister who's trying to actually do things, he doesn't come across as serious. And you watch him in the House of Commons, and he gets, the people around him are chuckling, and he's happy about his partisan stuff. But look at some of these MPs, the more serious guys. They're not laughing. Look at Michael Chong, for example. I'm not saying he's going to cross the floor or anything like that.
No, I don't think he would.
But he does not look like somebody who's enjoying this theatrics.
Well, and one of the concerns that I've had raised with me from, to be fair, Liberals and sort of more conservative-minded watchers is the politicking around a pipeline is actually undermining confidence in a pipeline. Like, investors aren't going to go anywhere near a pipeline if they think that there's not the political will to have it. And so there are growing concerns that the more politic, and maybe for political purposes, it serves the Conservatives, it serves Mr. Poilievre's agenda, that this pipeline doesn't go forward, that no investors step up to the plate. But that doesn't help the arguments that he's making about needing to grow the economy and get more Canadian oil to market. That's what he said he's been advocating for the last several years. A lot of people are saying what he's doing is actually harming that process.
Right. By the way, I'm just texting every conservative comms person. I was like, can we please get a statement and some reaction on this? Sorry, JD, go ahead.
I think it's worthwhile to go back to the night of the election on April 28th. That night, the Conservative leader lost his seat, but there was still cause for celebration because they had won more seats in Ontario. They just lost one tonight.
Right.
And so that's cause for concern. And will other people like Mr. Ma follow his steps and decide to go with the Liberal Party? That, is an open question right now. And it just kickstart again questions about Mr. Poilievre's leadership. And he's facing a critical vote, as you know, in January at the National Convention of the Conservative Party in Calgary. Now that leadership campaign is going to be more into focus because he lost.
And you can expect that over the winter break, because they're going to come back until January 26th.
The end, the end of January.
You can imagine that the Liberals will be talking to other Conservative MPs, those MPs that Steve McKinnon had talked about.
He's obviously got a list, right?
There's a list of them.
Making a list, checking it twice.
And when somebody crosses like that, when you now have two people crossing, who,
and a third one thinking about it too.
Third one. Think about this. This makes it easier, not harder, to cross the floor.
Yes.
That's true.
No,
because you're getting close to majority government. You could be the person that brings them over to form a majority government. Then they were in power for 4 years.
Well, and then the calculation starts too, the internal calculation. I had this conversation with someone from the Liberals and some people from the Conservatives last time, Mia, when we had the Genereux moment, but also the d'Entremont defection. They only need one more. Do you want to be the +1, or do you want to be the second, third, fourth? Or you want to be the +1 if you're thinking about it, because you become the kingmaker, and on the hitch, you're 075, bingo.
Well, and those other people that they're having these conversations with are seeing this today, and they now have decisions to make. Maybe they said they would think about it over the holidays. I mean, I wasn't expecting this tonight, in part because the House rose tonight. They're not sitting for 6 weeks. They said they didn't have to do this tonight. So I'm not entirely clear why the timing of this is happening, but this is what the Liberals were doing. But one more crosses the floor. I mean, this is already bad news for Mr. Poilievre. If one more crosses the floor and the Liberals get a majority, his path to surviving that confidence vote, or his leadership review vote in January, becomes a heck of a lot harder.
The Liberals have their Christmas party tonight, but so do the Conservative Party. So I'm sure that
they had
it was last night.
The Justice Committee didn't sit last night.
Okay, that's why. Okay, I thought it was tonight.
Well, good thing.
Because we'd all be there camped outside.
Yeah, it's something. But JD, I wonder about this. We were talking about this a little bit earlier, and in a minute, just so the control room knows, I want to go through those Angus Reid polling numbers that we had earlier. Mr. Poilievre, think about a year ago, Chrystia Freeland and all of those things were going to happen, and the invincibility and the inevitability of Mr. Poilievre is the main character in Canadian politics. He was driving the narrative. And it was a lot of the same tactics and the approaches that we see right now, but each time he did this, it brought a response from the Prime Minister and from his team. It gets dismissed now.
Yep.
So if you're trying to start a fight and the other team just does this and moves on, how do you get the traction? How do you get on the track? How do you get the narrative that you need to put yourself at the center of the story? Because Mark Carney is the main character in Canadian politics now. He is driving everything, including a lot of his people nuts with the pace of it all. But you can't get control of it because they won't even engage with it. They just dismiss things like the pipeline thing as a stunt,
yeah.
Right?
And fundamentally, I think the problem for Mr. Poilievre is the fact that he does not show much of his team. Who would be the finance minister in a future Poilievre government? I think that was a question that people asked during election campaign. I still have that question in my mind. Who would, among that caucus, could be potentially a finance minister?
His finance critic didn't even do the interviews on Budget Day. It was Andrew Scheer and Melissa Lantzman, right? Not Mr. Holland. We'd be happy to speak to, but it wasn't put up.
And since September, since he came back to the House of Commons, it remained a one-man show in the House of Commons and in the daily questions and even on press conference. So he needs to show more of his team. He needs to show that he's got, somebody who could be foreign affairs minister.
Well, he's got to do more than that. He's got to show he's a responsible opposition leader. When there are projects that are in the country's national interest, he can't play politics with that. You've got to say, we support these policies because they are in the country's interest. Then people start saying, well, you know what? You're a serious person. You actually care about the country. And then when you can start to put, and if you start putting some policies forward and the Prime Minister takes them as he has a number of conservative policies, you can make that a case, like I've been a responsible person. But what we get from him are games and sloganeering and cheap political shots. And it's obviously he doesn't see this because he's continuing to do this, and he's very likely, probably, if the hint from Steve McKinnon is there, we may have other people, at least another one.
Well,
coming.
Look, Mr. McKinnon, if you're watching, if you haven't gone to the Christmas party, you're welcome back to fill us in on any details of what's going on. Look, catch people up on what is going on if you're just joining us. You can see the breaking news red banner at the bottom of the screen. There has been another defection from the Conservative ranks to the Liberals. Michael Chong, the Member of Parliament for Markham-Unionville, issued a statement on the day Parliament rose for the holiday break and just in the hours leading up to the Liberal annual Christmas party, said that after listening carefully to the people of Markham-Unionville in recent weeks and reflecting with my family on the direction of our country, I have informed the Speaker and Leader of the Opposition that I will be joining Prime Minister Mark Carney in the government caucus. So this is now two MPs that have defected, Michael Chong and Chris D'Entremont, and one that has resigned and not been seen since in Edmonton MP Matt Genereux. This adds to a deteriorating situation reflected in new data from Angus Reid today about the strength of Pierre Poilievre's tenability as leader of the Conservative Party. He faces its review, and here's where things are. 58% of Conservative voters from the last election say Poilievre should stay as leader. That is a majority, but that is down. That is down 10 points since August. And this is just Conservative voters. And the numbers get worse for Poilievre when you move away from his core base to the voters that Conservatives need to win over in order to win an election. You've got 75% of the core CPC supporters who want him to stay. That's the cohort likely to dominate the Leadership Review Convention in January. That drops to just 40% support with voters who would consider voting CPC, potential swing voters, and it plummets to just 14% with voters who may consider voting Conservative, the group that really you need if you're going to win a majority government, Mia. So what you're seeing there is like the bedrock base is there, but there's been erosion overall with the people who voted on April 28th for a Conservative Prime Minister.
Yeah, I mean, that is not a good poll for Mr. Poilievre. That also happened before this latest floor crossing. People in that party who are watching him, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say bleeding at this point, but, it's a slow trickle over to the Liberals. Those numbers are not going to go up after a move like tonight. And if Mark Carney gets a majority, if another Conservative or more crosses the floor, it is very hard to see how the party could continue to support a leader who went from being assured to being the Prime Minister a year ago to giving the Liberals a majority government sort of 12 months later.
It's pretty unheard of that to see two MPs cross so quickly the floor after a federal election. I mean, that happened 6 months after the election. And that's unheard of. And also, I think what is interesting is that because Mr. Carney is stealing so many policies from the Conservative Party, that acts as a magnet for a progressive Conservative to the Liberal Party, because it's a Liberal Conservative sort of coalition that we see in front of us, led by Mark Carney. And I've had so many people talking to me about Mr. Carney and describing him as a progressive Conservative Prime Minister, not a Liberal Party. So that's how wide he can is appealing.
But he's moved right into the center. You know, like that, like, you know, when the body goes into shock, all the blood rushes to protect the vital organs and forget about the limbs, right? I mean, that's kind of where the Canadian electorate has gone. It's right to the middle in the face of everything that is happening. And you know, Bob, like, things have dramatically changed, and the Liberals, because this is what they do, they changed to survive and hold on to power. They did it. And Mr. Poilievre, despite losing the election and losing a seat, he has not fundamentally changed his tactics and approaches.
No, I mean, that's the big problem with him. Everybody has told him that you've got to grow up. You got to be a serious politician. You've got to stop the partisan sniping and the partisan games that you're playing in the House of Commons, which really don't play very well with most Canadians out there. And in terms of this leadership review vote, look, if he doesn't get over 80%, his goose is cooked, because we know from Joe Clark it was 78% or 79%. If you don't get that over 80%, in fact, I think he's got to get around 83%. Otherwise, he's going to be in serious problems. And I mean, the Liberals do not want Pierre Poilievre to be deposed as leader, because they think he's the best person they have going for them, because here you have a serious guy like Mark Carney, who's had all this private sector experience, central bank experience, who's moved the party to the center where most Canadians are comfortable, and has taken policies, including on crime, from the Conservatives. And you've got a guy who's interested in playing stunts and sound clips. That's the kind of guy they want to run against. You know, even though the Conservative and Liberal parties are very close in terms of public opinion polls.
And remember that the Conservative Party again adopted to be governed by the Reform Act that allow the caucus to depose the leader. So if one more MP, Conservative Party MP, decides to cross over the floor, that may be a signal for some to decide to change leader and start the process with the Reform Act to try to depose Mr. Poilievre.
Maybe, or Mia, is it distilling down to the hardcore? You know what I mean? Like, you know, Mr. Ma is brand new to Parliament, right? Been there since April, or, you know, in the days after April. And, you know, a lot of what you do see, they're Pierre Poilievre people, right? They ran for him and they're with him. So who knows?
I mean, you see that in those numbers, right? I mean, the core group of Conservative supporters, I mean, 75% in that poll say they still support Mr. Poilievre. To Bob's point, that may not be enough for him to hang on. That's, you know, one poll, and it's not, that's not, to be clear, that's not a Conservative member poll. That is a Conservative voter poll.
Yeah.
So the numbers are not exact as what the leadership review might say. But the more he gets down to that core group, the harder it is for them to appeal to the voters they need. They don't need that core group. That core group is staying with them. Yeah. They need those might consider Conservative voters. That's who they need to stay in their camp. And that's the group of people that did not vote for them.
Yeah, he's not in this to be a long-term Conservative leader. He wants to be the Prime Minister, right? And like JD is right. Like, technically, Bob, the Reform Act could be triggered in some way. But I don't know if caucus will gather even between now and the leadership review.
Well, I mean,
in Calgary.
What Poilievre is lucky is that there's nobody like a Brian Mulroney, who, when Joe Clark was around, Mulroney had people that were working to actively undermine him, and they successfully did. After he, in fact, they helped bring that below 80% vote for Mr. Clark back in 1980. I can't remember.
In the 80s.
But he doesn't. Fortunately, at this particular point for him, he doesn't have anybody in the wings that can challenge him. But I know there's just no sign from him that he is going to change his spots.
1983, nearly 70% approval is what I quickly found on the Joe Clark leadership review. So there you go. Like, 66.9% is what he got. Can't imagine Pierre Poilievre will get as low as Joe Clark just based on.
But he's still got to get more than 80.
But he needs to. Right now, it can't be anything that shows any kind of gap and further weakness. I mean, can it? Because like I don't know if he will look at losing the election after that big lead, losing his own seat in Carleton, because the narrative he pitched was that I was too much of a truth teller about what I was going to do to the civil service, even though he had been elected there when Stephen Harper was actually cutting the civil service, has gone off to Battle River Crowfoot, but has now seen the erosion and the defections, and I don't know. I mean, it seems as if he needs to come to the conclusion, if he gets there, that maybe Justin Trudeau struggled with as well. That maybe you can't get it done now.
Well, I mean, it's a question he has to be asking himself. It's a question his MPs have to be asking. Is this the guy that can actually get us into government, get us across the aisle to where we want to be? A year ago, absolutely, he seemed like the guy that was going to get it done. I think what the election and the very quick swing in the polls suggested is that Canadians weren't voting for the Conservatives because of Pierre Poilievre's leadership. They were voting for the Conservatives in that number because they were ready to get rid of Justin Trudeau. And when there was a new offering in the window, they turned to him. To Bob's point, there isn't another person standing up in the wings saying, hey, it could be me. There's names floating around. We know who sort of some of those people are who might sort of jump in, but it's not really obvious to most Canadians who that might be. It may not even be that obvious to Conservatives themselves who that may be. This has been their guy for so long. It's actually going to be difficult, I think, for this party to make that switch in their head.
Yeah.
But again, I come back to if one more Conservative crosses the floor and Mark Carney gets a majority, I don't know that they have a choice.
Well, the appeal that Pierre Poilievre had for, obviously, a lot of people weren't happy in the caucus. Right? We've all talked to them, and now some of them have left. But JD, it was his inevitability. He was going to win. It was a matter of time. So deal with it, and it'll happen. Now it looks less and less likely he can win. Nothing is certain yet, but if the majority tips for the Liberals, he won't get a chance to even go for it for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and
right?
that gives time to people who think that a change in leadership is necessary to act and do whatever they need to do to get Mr. Poilievre to leave. But that means that it's a bit interesting to say that when Parliament was about to rise, I was expecting a possibility of a spring election because everybody was, sort of gearing that way, and it's moving pieces all the time.
Yeah, and moving pieces all the time is a great description of it.
But you're right on that. I mean, if it's going to be a lot easier for the Liberals to get another Conservative, moderate Conservative, to cross the floor, because if they will be a majority government. That means they're safe for 4 years. They have opportunity to convince voters that the floor crossing was in their best interest, or not, depending on when the election is and how this government performs. So I think we're going to be, over the next couple of months, watching very, very carefully to see who else may cross the floor. And
months? It could be days, could be hours.
It could be
15 minutes left in this show.
The Liberal Party's not over yet.
It's probably worth noting that they're crossing the floor to a party that is also pushing a lot of the policies that they campaigned on. This is not people who are crossing the floor to a party that campaigned on a bunch of, maybe there's a few things, but a lot of the things that Mark Carney is doing are very similar to the things that the Conservatives campaigned on. So it's not that hard to see some of them saying, oh, you know what, I can actually back that.
If the progressive flank of the Liberals can live with the changes, moderate Conservatives can live with, the compromises. Do you know what I mean? Because it is in the middle. And the lesson I took away from talking to people after the d'Entremont defection and other things was that loyalty and discipline are much better when they're voluntary as opposed to imposed. And that was what, people like that were struggling with, as we've seen. And look, we don't yet know exactly what Michael Ma reasons were entirely, though we do have a statement we want to just show you some of the quotes from. He said in announcing his defection to the Liberals, "This is a time for unity and decisive action for Canada's future. I have concluded that Prime Minister Mark Carney is offering the steady, practical approach we need to deliver on the priorities I hear every day while door knocking in Markham, Unionville. And you know, JD, this comes on the day, the day, we're going to look at seat count in a second, but those words comes on the day when the House Leader is lecturing the Conservatives for obstruction and getting in the way of everything. You're seeing some of that there. Let's get stuff done, not play the games,
and
right?
His comments are very much similar to what Mr. d'Entremont said. So it's a common theme among conservative, progressive wing of the Conservative Party who feel that Mr. Carney is appealing because he's, you know, enacting policies that they feel their constituency want in their own riding. So it's a very convincing argument, in my sense, to say that after you cross, and it could, you know, bring along other members. I don't rule out over the Christmas holiday other MPs from the Conservative Party decided to cross the floor because they will be back in their riding.
Does it need to be a Conservative? Is there a Bloc MP?
Bloc,
you know, like I'm not advocating for it.
Yeah.
You know the nature of that far better than a unilingual guy from St. John's.
I would be, you know,
I would be surprised.
I would
yes.
be like this on the floor if.
But you know, look what the Conservatives have been doing. One of the things we were supposed to talk about is what happened in Parliament before it closed, and what we've seen are the Conservatives blocking a lot of legislation in committees, particularly the budget implementation bill, which contains a lot of measures that are going to, on infrastructure projects, that are going to help Conservative ridings. And you've got to be sitting there as a member of Parliament. Why am I blocking this from passing when it could benefit me and the people in my riding?
One of the bills that they were somewhat blocking from passing, which did eventually pass today at third reading, is C4. And you know what C4 did? It got rid of the carbon tax. What has this party been campaigning against for the last several years? Now, the carbon tax sort of went away in April, but this was the legislation to do it. And so obstructing legislation that actually did it, I mean, that just says about sort of the level of games. Now, let's be clear. The Liberals have been playing their own games. This is not it is not just a Conservative problem or Conservative stunts. I've been tearing my hair out all day as they've been fighting over who's blocking who in the Justice Committee. It's sort of ridiculous. But the problem is that you have a Prime Minister who is standing up and saying, I want to get things done, I'm moving fast, and the only thing Canadians right now are seeing from Conservatives is obstructing or criticizing. They're not actually saying this, we're going to help you get this done. We're not going to help you get this pipeline built. We're going to help you pass
the
these
compromise that is offered by Mr. Poilievre, and I'm not saying this to pile on the Conservatives, but is we will help you if you do what we campaigned on. And that's essentially every compromise, right? Is do it from what as the Conservatives pitch, and that's just not how it works. I mean, there's obviously been very little sign of compromise and flexibility from the Liberals, JD, and and the Prime Minister made a direct promise to Elizabeth May on the budget vote day, and then did what he did with Alberta and lost Stephen Guilbeault. So clearly he knew he wasn't going to meet that commitment, right?
And it's good that you mentioned the resignation of Stephen Guilbeault. So with that addition of a Conservative Party from today, the Liberals finished the session on a high note after having difficulty dealing with the departure of Stephen Guilbeault, who, by the way, has been giving a lot of interviews, wrote open letters to criticize the Liberal environment policy. So that was, sort of a burden to carry for Mr. Carney. Now, with this addition, he's got room to breathe again.
Also worth noting, he lost Guilbeault from cabinet. He did not lose him from the party. And Mr. Guilbeault has said, if an election were held today, I would still vote for Mark Carney. So
would he run for Mark Carney, though, is what I wonder if it was held today.
That is still obviously
that's another question,
the question, but it's still, Mr. Carney is losing some people, but not entirely, whereas the Conservatives right now have lost 2 people from their caucus entirely.
Yeah, and JD, there is a longer conversation, not for tonight, about the Liberals in Quebec in the face of a possible PQ election victory and a referendum. If Guilbeault goes, if other people leave in the cabinet shuffle that we expect in the new year, where are your champions leading up to a possible sovereignty battle? That is a question I have, but it could very well be a majority Liberal government fighting that if this continues.
Yeah, and I'll throw this to you tonight. Pablo Rodriguez is very much in difficulty in Quebec.
Yep.
We expect him to be forced to resign in the coming days. He's losing support by the hour. So I expect some phone calls to be made in one direction, from Montreal to the office of François-Philippe Champagne, to say, come and save the Liberal Party of Quebec, otherwise we're facing a referendum question. So I think there will be some pressure, like Jean Charest in the 1990s, when he was pressured by Quebecing to come and save the Liberal Party of Quebec. and prevent another referendum on sovereignty, because this is what the Parti québécois is proposing. It is leading in the poll right now, and people are getting more nervous by the day because of the Quebec Liberal Party is sort of imploding.
Can Pablo Rodriguez cross the floor to Mark Carney? No, he can't, right? That does it. Look,
we're not going to ride on the 20.
That would be quite a thing. Look, we want to show you the latest seat count in the House of Commons with the events of today. We were not prepared to talk about this, but here we are. The Liberals are now up 1 to 171, just 1 seat short of a stable majority. The Conservatives now down to 142 seats. The Bloc at 22, the NDP at 7, and of course the Green, or as it would be reported, because they're not an official party in the House, are at 1. So Bob, it's it was 169, 144 election night, and in that 142, of course, is Matt Genereux, who is not a vote that they can count on, and who knows what happens when he eventually gets around to resigning in Edmonton Riverbend. What a by-election might bring out there with Mark Carney bringing in an MOU to the campaign.
Well, I think a lot of us had been expecting a spring election because everything was being held up in Parliament, and they couldn't get things done. And look, the country is facing a very serious crisis here with Donald Trump and the effort to try to stabilize the economy and get it growing again. And now the prospect is that they are 1 seat short of getting a majority, which would mean he can do what he needs to do, or says he needs to do, to diversify the economy, and also gives him a better mandate to be able to negotiate with Donald Trump as the United States, Mexico, Canada Free Trade Agreement comes up for renewal. So. Boy, this is...
And one point to make is the fact that if the Liberals actually get a majority with another floor crosser, that means they would also naturally get majority at committees.
Right.
And that changed the dynamics totally.
A lot of the problems go away, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. So that changed the dynamics totally in Parliament.
And we haven't seen that since before 2019.
Yep. Yeah, it's been 2015 was the last majority, right? And Trudeau had a resounding majority in the 180s, I believe it was. And since then, it's been, well, the pandemic kind of changed a lot of things. But what do you think is going through the minds of the Conservative caucus right now? Like this, Michael Chong was not on anyone's radar, from what I can tell and what others can tell. I mean, he was not a name we had ever heard, right? We had a common list that we all expected, but he wasn't one of them.
He was definitely not one of them, and we do know the names of other people that we think that they've been talking to. Look, they've got to be demoralized. Not only the fact that they're losing members of Parliament to the Liberals, but when you look at the personal popularity of the two leaders, I mean, Mark Carney's at like 62, 63%, which is amazing to have, and there's a 25% gap with Pierre Poilievre. So, this is a harsh game, but, right now they've got a leader that is an albatross around their necks, and they've got to be thinking, is there somebody out there? Because, I mean, the object of being being a part of a political party is to form government so you can do things. If you've got a guy that lost an election campaign with a 20% lead and now is losing members of Parliament, and the guy who beat you is way, way ahead, the party's got to be thinking, we need somebody that we can put up against Mark Carney that can beat him. And right now, it doesn't look like it's Pierre Poilievre.
And I think you're going to start to see some of those names coming out of the woodwork a little bit more now that we're on the edge of this. We haven't heard them. They've been giving Mr. Poilievre the benefit of the doubt. But as more of these people, and I know there's at least 1 or 2 that have been questioning and wanting to do it, the question is, are they actually going to start to make that sort of feeling known? And the closer he gets to this majority, the more likely we're going to start hearing those names.
We're going to have to say goodbye in like 30 seconds, but just Markham Unionville, where Michael Chong was elected and now crossed the floor, that is like Acadianapolis in Nova Scotia, Chris d'Entremont's seat. Ones where Liberals and Conservatives are competitive. So crossing the floor doesn't mean the end of your career. You've got a chance to hold on and win. We started 2025 with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, Joe Biden was still in the White House, and Pierre Poilievre had a 25-point lead. I don't know where we're going to end 2025.
That's why we love our jobs.
But Mark Carney's 1 seat away of a majority government, and here we are. The Reporter Roundtable, they scrambled, they answered, they delivered. Bob Fife, JD Bellavance, Mia Robson, I'm David Cochran. Thanks for watching.